Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So even though the 2024 draft isn't even 3 months old at this point, it is never too early to start looking ahead to the 2025 draft. So today, I thought it would be a fun idea for me to give out my NHL 2025 Mock Draft 1.0. Last year, I ended up doing like 5 to 6 different mock drafts. So the plan is we're going to do one now. We're going to do one come end of October, early November, when we have NHL standings on top of these junior leagues are like 10 to 15 games into the season. And then I'm going to end up doing like 6 to 7 most likely. And when looking at this 2025 draft, it's looking pretty solid. I think that there's like 3 legit, maybe franchise level guys on top of another 6 high level elite potential guys. There's definitely no Macklin Celebrini quite yet, but I think that there's a lot of high end talent. And how we're going to do this is obviously the NHL season has not started. I'm going to go based on my own personal rankings right now in terms of my most recent bottom 10 when looking at that, as well as 2 other teams. So I'm going to read it out now. Again, don't turn this into a debate about what this order is. Just go talk about the goddamn draft prospects. But here's the order. As you can see, it goes Sharks, Jackets, Flames, Hawks, Flyers, Ducks, Blues, Wings, Canadians, Penguins, Utah Hockey Club, in the Seattle Kraken. That could change. I'm going to do my standing predictions like next week. That is not set in stone by any stretch. That's just a rough order that we're going to be going based on my prior rankings. So without further ado, let's get into it. And at first overall, even though they've selected a center back-to-back years with top 5 picks, top 4 picks, I have the San Jose Sharks taking James Higgins. Yes, I understand that they are loading up on the center talent, but I still feel like James Higgins is the clear number 1 as of right now, and even the next 2 best prospects, in my opinion, probably next 2 to 3 are forwards. So I think you still go with the best forward. If this was like 2022 draft where there was like Simone Nemec, David Jiricek, then Slavkovsky, Wright, and Cooley, then maybe you maybe force a defenseman, even if you slightly like a forward a little bit more. I am more of a best player available. But in San Jose's case, given this draft, I think you take the best player available, and by far, it's a forward. It's going to be a forward this year in terms of a guy like James Higgins, and you just worry you probably would have to move Will Smith most likely over to the wing. But Higgins is fantastic, and also last year they did get Sam Dickinson. I'm not sure he's going to be like a franchise superstar number 1 defenseman, but they have one solid defenseman prospect, and they traded up smartly to do that. So when looking at Higgins, he put up around like Jack Hughes level numbers in his draft year, -1 in the USHL, 47 points in 26 games, on top of breaking Nikita Kucherov's U18 World Championships points record. He had like 22 in 7 games. He's great, just amazing playmaker with the puck on his stick. And as a result, if you're the San Jose Sharks, you take them, and you're going to have one of the best forward cores of the 2030s, without a doubt, with that Celebrini, Higgins, Smith, Eklund, and other guys, Musty. It's going to be absolutely disgusting. They get James Higgins at first overall. Second overall, the Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm going to go with Porter Martone. When looking at it, they get yet another CHL big guy that can score a shit ton of goals. Waddell took Lindstrom last year in the draft, or a couple months ago in the draft, at, 4th overall. And I think Martone is either the second or third best prospect in this draft right now. I would have him. I think I would have him second right now. It's a toss-up between another guy that we're going to get it to. He was very good this year in the OHL, having 33 goals, 38 assists for 71 points in 60 games. Would not shock me this year if he goes for like 45 goals, 55 assists, 100 points, 6'3", very good playmaker, very heavy shot. I think you just load up on the wings for guys like Kent Johnson, like Adam Fantilli, that are your franchise centers. And again, they don't have to force a defenseman here, especially they're even a better spot than San Jose when it comes to defensemen, considering the fact that they have David Jiricek, they have Denton Matejchuk, they have Zach Werenski, he's 27 years old, but he's a fantastic player, as well as Damon Severson locked up for the next 7 years. So you go with Porter Martone. The Calgary Flames at 3rd overall, I have them taking Anton Frundell. Last year, you got yourself that blue chip defenseman prospect in Zane Perrick at 9th overall. They're still kind of lacking a blue chip forward prospect, so it's pretty easy. And at this 3rd overall selection, I do think there's a top 3 right now forming of Higgins, Martone, and then Frundell. Frundell was very good this past year in the Swedish U20s league. He is just your prototypical, very, very high IQ, smart, playmaking, two-way Swedish center. And I think that the Calgary Flames would get a great piece here at 3rd overall. in Anton Frundell. 4th overall, we maybe start going a little bit off the board. The Chicago Blackhawks, I have them taking Jacob Wozniak, another Swedish guy that was even better than Frundell last year in the Swedish U20 League. He had 50 points in 36 games, 22 of which were goals. He actually set the 17-year-old U20 League. Guys like Lucas Raymond, he had the most productive season from a 17-year-old in the U20s League. And I think when looking at the Chicago Blackhawks, they have Leshinov, they have Korchinski that they took top 10 in 2024 and 2022. You got to get Bedard, that second future elite first liner. I like some of their other forward prospects right now, and Oliver Moore and Frank Nazar, but I think Wozniak is definitely a step up compared to those guys. 6'3", very smooth skating with a very, very good shot. Not the most physical guy at 6'3", maybe like a Porter Martone, but he has all the tools to potentially be a 40 goal, 55 assists, 95. I know that sounds pretty bold, but I'm saying if he's on Bedard's wing. If not, he's probably going to be in any other situation, more so just like a point per game, 35 and 45 kind of guy. But with Bedard, he could be a very special player because Bedard is obviously a generational talent. The Philadelphia Flyers, Matthew Schaefer. When looking at it in 2023, they get Matvei Michkov. In 2024, they trade back a pick. They don't take Zeev Boyum, so I think that they got to go defenseman here. They obviously traded back to get Jet Luchenko. I think was a little bit of a reach. So here they go Matthew Schaefer. They get a potential future franchise #1 defenseman because even though I like guys like Oliver Bonk, I've hyped up Cam York a lot. Are those guys legit #1s on actual serious contending teams? No, in my opinion, but Matthew Schaefer has all the physical tools to be a fantastic two-way guy. He's really emerged as this #1 defenseman in the past 6 months, separating himself from a guy that we're going to get to in Logan Hensler. Matthew Schaefer, 6'2", very, very good both ways. High IQ player. The points weren't really quite there for the Erie Otters this season. I think he's going to take another step, and at the international level, he has been fantastic for Canada. So the Flyers get their franchise #1 defenseman, hopefully. The Anaheim Ducks at 6th overall, Pat Verbeek yet again satisfies his tall guy fetish and takes Roger McQueen. Roger McQueen, 6'5" this past year in the WHL, had 21 goals, 31 assists for 51 points in 53 games. When looking at the Verbeek drafting strategy, he likes his physical tools. Looking at Leo Carlson, Beckett Seneca, Stian Solberg, big physical guy. So I think Roger McQueen fits in yet again. Not sure that they would go defense considering, although maybe they could after Schaefer. Maybe they could go Hensley here, but I think more so forward makes sense. Their defense core, their forward core is also loaded, but they already have Minchikov, they already have Zellweger, Tristan Luneau, Stian Solberg that they just selected. So I have them taking Roger McQueen with the 6th overall selection. 7th overall, here's where I'm going to have Logan Hensler go to the St. Louis Blues. Even though they took Adam Jiricek at 16th overall, I still think that they have very solid forward prospects, but maybe need another defenseman to add to their pool. And Logan Hensler was the consensus #1 defenseman, top 3 pick like 6 to 8 months ago. Not sure about his offensive ceiling, but I think he's a very, very responsible, high IQ defensive player. So I think maybe not a franchise center, but I would take him over Adam Jiricek in my opinion. And he definitely has the potential to be a 45 to 50 point, very, very good top pairing defenseman. The Detroit Red Wings, I have them selecting Ivan Ryabkin. He is a center from Russia. If Demidov and Michkov were the best Russian prospects to come out of Russia, not talking Andrei Svechnikov, who played in the OHL or what was it, to come out of Russia, if those guys were #1 and #2, whichever way you want to order it, I'm not turning it into this debate, he's #3. He's the #3 guy. When looking at what he did this year in the MHL, he had the 4th highest draft year -1 production in the MHL, only behind Michkov, Demidov, and Kucherov. Ryabkin is a very, very good creative playmaker. He's like 6 foot or 6'1", no real height concerns. And as we've seen most recently, the contract concerns are a little bit overblown. So for the Detroit Red Wings, they get a guy that has a lot of upside. I like Nate Danielson, but I think I would take Ryabkin long-term over him as that second-line center. And then maybe you move down Danielson to a more two-way, very good third-line center. And Detroit really figures out their centers of the future by getting a guy like Ivan Ryabkin. The Montreal Canadiens, I have them selecting Michael Misa. When looking at Michael Misa, got a ton of hype a year ago, considering the fact he got exceptional status, and then put up 56 points in 45 games. He was trending to be like a John Tavares level talent. Very, very good in the OHL, but this year that progression plateaued and honestly went down in terms of point per game, only having 75 points in 67 games. Still a very good prospect, still just does everything at a very, I wouldn't say high, but a very good to very good level, and I think that he is a very good prospect, but I think he is going to slip considering these other forwards that I've listed, in my opinion, just have more potential than a guy like Michael Misa. But when looking at the Montreal Canadiens, they don't really need to hit a home run with this pick. I think they're going to be improved. I don't think they're going to be picking top 6. They need to hit a single or a double with this pick. And I think Michael Misa kind of encapsulates that. He's going to be a good top 6 forward. He might not turn into this star like Ryabkin could, like McQueen could, but in my opinion, he has a higher floor. So for him to potentially turn into their number 2 center one day, him and Kirby Dach fighting for that, or their number 2 left wing, him and Alex Newhook fighting for that. Not sure he's ever going to be this elite first liner, but I think for the Montreal Canadiens, he has a very high floor, and their defense core is locked up for the most part. So they go Michael Misa there. Number 10, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins taking Malcolm Spence. Very talented left winger who was great last year in the OHL. This year took another step with 62 points in 66 games for the Erie Otters. 6'2", high-paced, very high motor in my opinion. And I think for a Pittsburgh Penguins team that's still trying to win now, he could probably be NHL ready rather quick compared to maybe some of these other guys that are a little bit more high upside prospects. So I have Pittsburgh taking Malcolm Spence, and he still has a very high ceiling as well as being NHL ready rather soon. The Utah Hockey Club, I have them taking Charlie Trethway. When looking at it, I thought they were going to go defense last year, but considering the fact that Simashev was really their only elite defenseman prospect, they didn't have much beyond that, but they ended up taking TJ Ginla. I didn't hate the pick once they traded for Mikhail Sergachev, traded for John Marino. But I still think they probably should go defenseman. And Charlie Trethewey is a very good 6'1". He's very physical. The offensive ceiling actually is pretty solid. He had 35 points in 52 games last year. So I think for Utah, their defense core isn't old by any stretch. They got Sergachev, who's 26, Marino's 27, Valimaki and Durzi are going to be 26 in a month. But they need to start thinking long-term in terms of some of their young guys coming up on rather cheap deals. So I think Charlie Trethewey would be a very solid pick. He definitely has top pair potential for the Utah Hockey Club. And then lastly, I had to cut the recording because I tried to pronounce his name 9,000 times. I'm going to botch it. Luka Radivojevic. When looking at him, he's a Slovakian defenseman that is currently playing in Sweden, and he had a fantastic draft year -1 playing Swedish U20s League. He had 33 points in 43 games, a great puck-moving offensive defenseman. And for comparison, another undersized Swedish player that played in Sweden and was a Swedish defenseman, but Axel Sandin Pellikka, he barely even played in his draft year -1 in the Swedish U20 League. He only had 3 points in 14 U20 games, mainly playing at the U18 level. So the fact that Luka is so good at the U20 level at only 16, 17 years old last year, he could really break out, and he could potentially play on Orebro's SHL team this year. He is only 5'10". That is a drawback, similarly to Axel Sandin Pellikka. But I think when looking at the offensive potential with this guy, he could turn into a 50 to 60 point top pair offensive defenseman. Not sure he's ever going to have the defensive capabilities to be a true number 1 or anything like that, but he has so much offensive talent. And when looking at Seattle, I also thought they were going to go with defensemen this year in the draft. Berkeley Cadden kind of fell into their laps. I don't hate that pick, but their defense core is even older than the Utah Hockey Club, and they don't even have a Simashev. When looking at guys like Montour, 30 years old, Alexiak, 31, Larson, 32, Dunn is like their youngest guy in their top 4, and he's still 27, turning 28 in a couple months. So if they have a high pick, if they have a pick if they have their pick next year, they got to go defense. They have so many goddamn forward prospects. They need to go defense. But here is the final order. We got Higgins to San Jose, Martone to Columbus, Frondell to Calgary, Yves Wozniak to Chicago, Matthew Schaefer to the Philadelphia Flyers, Roger McQueen to the Ducks, Logan Hensler to the Blues, Ryabkin to the Detroit Red Wings, Michael Misa to the Montreal Canadiens, Malcolm Spence to the Penguins, Charlie Trethewey to the Utah Hockey Club, and then Luka to the Seattle Kraken. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Don't turn this into a debate about I don't think the Philadelphia Flyers are going to be the 5th worst team in the NHL. It's not what this video is intended for. I'm going to do my division predictions. Feel free to shit on where I think teams are going to finish then. Don't do it now. This is not the time or place. Talk 2025 draft, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one.